Hey there, infrastructure admins. Welcome to this explainer. If you're gearing up for the Nutanix Certified Professional Multi-Cloud Infrastructure 7.5 certification, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're focusing entirely on Objective 6.1, creating and updating VMs. Now, our goal here isn't just to skim the surface. We're going to master this at a steady, unhurried pace. We'll look at the exact procedures you need to know, but more importantly, we're going to uncover the underlying why behind these configurations and shine a huge spotlight on those tricky edge cases that the exam absolutely loves to test you on. Okay, let's dive right into this mental syllabus, which is perfectly designed to guarantee your exam readiness. We'll start with the centralized paradigm, then do a focused walkthrough, hit the hot plug rules, uncover the UEFI boot order trap, and wrap up with an exam day cheat sheet. Section 1, the centralized paradigm. We're looking specifically at why Prism Central matters. Before we get into the weeds, let's quickly lock down our terminology because, trust me, Nutanix relies heavily on these distinctions on the exam. PC stands for Prism Central. That's your multi-cluster management plane. PE is Prism Element, which manages just a single cluster. Then you have ACLI, the Acropolis Command Line Interface, which is going to be your best friend when the graphical interface hits its limits. AHV is the Acropolis Hypervisor, Nutanix's native hypervisor. And finally, UEFI, the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, the modern boot firmware for your VMs. Keeping the boundaries between PC and PE crystal clear is absolutely crucial for passing this exam. To really put that into perspective, let's talk about memory over commit. If you're creating a VM and you want to enable the memory over commit feature right out of the gate, you absolutely must use Prism Central. The Prism Element web console simply doesn't allow you to enable memory over commit while you're creating a VM. If you accidentally start the process in Prism Element, you literally have to log into Prism Central anyway, navigate to the Update VM page, and enable it there. It's a huge waste of administrative time, and the exam tests your efficiency. Knowing to start in PC saves you that whole extra step. Moving right along to Section 2, the walkthrough. Let's look at the actual execution and some concrete examples. Navigating to create or update a VM in Prism Central is completely standardized, and mapping out this muscle memory is key. You start the application switcher, you select the infrastructure application, navigate down to compute, and finally hit VMs. Boom, this drops you into the list tab, which gives you one unified view of all your VMs across all your registered clusters. This standardized path is exactly what makes managing a centralized multi-cluster environment so efficient, and it's the exact workflow you're expected to know by heart. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer simplicity of the Nutanix UI philosophy. Once you select a VM and hit Update, whether that's via the checkbox, a right-click, or from the summary page, the Update window that pops up includes the exact same configuration fields as the Create window. From an exam perspective, that is fantastic news. If you know how to configure a VM from scratch, you automatically know the Update interface. The whole shebang is right there. No hidden menus that magically appear only after a VM is built. Let's look at a couple of concrete configuration examples you're going to see in both of those windows. First up, vCPU and memory. These are your compute resources, and they're hot pluggable on AHV, but with some very strict constraints that we'll break down in just a second. Next, disks. When you're attaching a vDisk, you define the device type, the bus, and the size. And if you're building blueprints in self-service, you can even define minimum and maximum size values. Finally, your NECs. You have to choose either VLAN subnets or overlay subnets. Now, choosing between them depends entirely on your network boundaries. VLAN subnets tie you directly to physical infrastructure constraints within a specific cluster. Overlay subnets, though, they give you software-defined flexibility operating within a virtual private cloud, spanning right across your environment. Section 3, hot plug rules. I really need you to heighten your focus here, because this is exactly where the exam traps live. So, memory and CPUs are hot pluggable on guest VMs running on AHV. That means you can adjust them without downtime. But, and this is a massive but, there is a hard dividing line between what you can do powered on versus powered off. While the VM is powered on, you can increase memory, you can increase CPUs, and you can change the number of vCPU sockets. However, if a VM is powered on, you absolutely cannot change the number of cores per socket. To do that, you must power down. The exam will definitely try to trick you by mixing up sockets and cores. If you memorize just one thing right now, make it this. Sockets are hot pluggable, cores per socket are not. This crucial point is summarized perfectly in a direct quote from the AHV administration guide. You cannot decrease the memory allocation and the number of CPUs on your VMs while the VMs are powered on. Notice that word? Decrease. Increasing resources on the fly is totally fine. Scaling them back, that requires a maintenance window, for sure. If you see a scenario on the exam asking you to reduce a VM's memory on the fly to save resources, you know instantly, no way, that requires a power off.
Let's see how this builds into our next crucial topic, Section 4, the UEFI boot order trap. We are moving beyond the graphical interface now.
We just talked about how robust Prism Central and Prism Elements are. But here is the critical limitation you absolutely must know for Objective 6.1. Currently, Nutanix does not support setting up the boot device order for UEFI VMs using either of the web consoles. You simply cannot do it in the GUI. And here is exactly why that limitation becomes a massive trap. Let's say you have a UEFI VM. After any power cycle event, the system automatically configures the Acropolis default boot device order. And that default? It specifies the CD/DVD-ROM device as the very first in the line. So imagine your production VM reboots, and instead of your operating system loading, it just hangs on an installation screen because an old ISO was left mounted. It's going to boot directly into that ISO and bypass your OS entirely. To prevent that kind of unplanned downtime, you have to intercept it and manually configure the boot order using the Acropolis command line interface. So here is the exact command structure you're going to need to be familiar with. You'll log into a controller VM with SSH, type ACLI to enter the prompt, and then run ACLI vm.update boot device followed by your VM's name, and then boot device order equals 0 with your preferred order. For example, K network, K disk, K CD-ROM. That forces the VM to look at the network, then the hard disk, before it ever even thinks about looking at the CD-ROM. Mastering ACLI is literally essential when the GUI hits its limits.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground today. Let's synthesize all of this in Section 5, the exam day cheat sheet. Here are the 4 key facts you need to memorize.
Fact 1. Prism Central is absolutely required if you want to configure memory over commit during initial VM creation. Prism Element just can't do it. Fact 2. The Create VM and Update VM windows share identical configuration fields. Learn one and you automatically know the other. Fact 3. Hot plug allows increasing resources and changing sockets while powered on, but it requires a power off to decrease resources or change cores per socket. And fact 4. You cannot set UEFI boot order in the web consoles. It mandates an ACLI configuration, especially after power cycles, to avoid booting from that default CD-ROM. I really want to leave you with this final thought as you continue your prep. Are you relying a little too much on the Prism Central GUI when a client might be the only way to save your UEFI VMs from booting the wrong drive? The very best infrastructure admins and the ones who easily ace this exam know exactly where the GUI ends and where the command line begins. Best of luck on your certification journey. Keep studying those edge cases, and thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.